What if I told you that a significant chunk of the power your engine is silently bleeding away every single day has nothing to do with worn-out parts, age, or bad luck? It comes down to a handful of things sitting right under your hood that haven't been looked at in years. Some of them cost almost nothing to fix. None of them require a lift or a degree in engineering. And the reason most people never deal with them is simple. A car that runs like a dog brings customers back. A car that runs like new doesn't. So today I'm going to show you the things that genuinely make your engine run better, the kind of improvements you actually feel from the driver's seat. Stay to the end because the last one is the tool almost nobody owns, but that changes everything about how you maintain a car. One honest thing before we start: none of this replaces serious mechanical work if your engine genuinely needs it. What this does is remove the self-inflicted drag that quietly robs most engines of the power and efficiency they were built with. Let's go. The first thing, and the one that costs the least and shocks the most people when they finally do it, is cleaning the mass airflow sensor. The MAF sensor sits between your air filter and your throttle body. Its whole job is to measure how much air is entering the engine and feed that number to the car's computer, which then calculates exactly how much fuel to inject. Get a dirty, inaccurate reading, and the computer is essentially guessing. It'll run the engine too rich or too lean. Too rich and you're wasting fuel and fouling things downstream. Too lean and the engine is stressed and misfiring. Either way, you lose power, you lose economy, and in some cases you end up with a check engine light and a handful of codes that look terrifying until you realize the cause was a thin film of dust on a sensor that takes 6 minutes to clean. The contamination builds up gradually over tens of thousands of miles. You never notice the car getting worse day by day. You just slowly forget what it felt like when it was right. The fix is cheap. Use dedicated mass airflow sensor cleaner specifically, not carburetor cleaner, not brake cleaner, because the sensing element is extremely delicate. Remove the sensor, spray it gently, let it air dry for half an hour so every trace of solvent is gone. Reinstall it. That's the whole job. If the sensor was the source of the problem, you'll feel the difference on the test drive. Never clean it with the connector still attached and power flowing to it. Toyota and Lexus owners, check your specific model first, because some of those vehicles use a Kármán vortex airflow sensor that cannot be cleaned the same way. The second thing is cleaning the throttle body, and this connects directly to the MAF because once air passes the sensor, the throttle body is the next place it hits. It's the gatekeeper of your engine, a round housing with a butterfly valve that controls how much air flows into the intake manifold. At idle, that valve is nearly closed, and the tiny gap that remains is what keeps the engine running at the right RPM. The problem is that modern engines route oil vapor from inside the crankcase back through the intake to be burned. Good for emissions. Not good for your throttle body, because those vapors coat the bore and the butterfly valve with a sticky black film. Carbon adds to it. Over time, that tiny idle gap gets partially blocked, and no matter how hard the computer tries to compensate, it cannot override a physical restriction. The result is a rough idle, a shudder at stoplights, hesitation when you first press the throttle, and sometimes a check engine light for idle control. Cleaning it restores smooth airflow and gives back the crisp throttle response a dirty unit quietly kills. The job takes 30 to 60 minutes and costs under $20. Use throttle body cleaner and be careful on electronic throttle bodies with sensors and motors built in because harsh chemicals will destroy that hardware. One thing most guides skip: after cleaning, many vehicles need an idle relearn where the computer re-establishes its baseline. If the car idles rough or too high afterward, that's the ECU running on its old calibration. For most Toyotas and Lexus vehicles, the system relearns on its own after a full warm-up and a drive at varied speeds with accessories off. Give it 10 to 50 miles before you judge the result. The third thing is replacing your spark plugs on time. This gets deferred almost universally because the car seems to run fine and the service interval on paper can stretch to 60 or even 100,000 miles. But here's what's happening while you defer. Every time a plug fires, the electrodes wear slightly. That gap widens incrementally with every combustion event. As the gap grows, the plug needs more voltage to jump it, and past a certain point, the ignition system can't always deliver on time. The The result is subtle, partial misfires that waste fuel and gradually rob you of the clean combustion the engine was designed around. Worn plugs cause rough idle, hesitation, sluggish acceleration, and increased fuel consumption, and they mimic symptoms of far more expensive problems, which sends people chasing the wrong repair. Replacing them restores the correct gap, the correct spark intensity, and complete combustion. Studies have found worn plugs can cut fuel economy significantly, and replacing them at or before their service interval recovers that loss. Use the correct plug type for your engine. Don't put copper plugs on an engine designed for iridium. Iridium holds up better under heat and pressure and maintains a more consistent gap across its service life. Install them with a torque wrench to spec, because over or under torqued plugs cause their own problems. The fourth thing is using top-tier fuel and using it consistently. This isn't about premium versus regular octane, it's about detergents. Some gasoline only meets the minimum federal deposit control standard. Top-tier is a voluntary higher standard adopted by a number of major brands that requires significantly more cleaning additives than the legal minimum. The American Automobile Association ran an independent study and found non-top-tier gasoline left 19 times more carbon deposits on intake valves and injectors than top-tier fuel after just a few thousand miles. 19 times. And switching to top-tier actively cleaned off existing deposits. Carbon deposits on intake valves choke airflow, disrupt injector spray patterns, cause rough idle, and hit direct injection engines especially hard, because those engines don't have fuel washing over the valves to help keep them clean. The price difference averaged about 3 cents per gallon. 3 cents to keep your combustion chamber clean, your injectors spraying correctly, and your power and economy at factory level. Find a top-tier station and make it your default. The fifth thing is the air filter, and it's simpler than most people treat it. Replace it when it needs it, not on a fixed mileage schedule. Most vehicles suggest every 15 to 30,000 miles, but that assumes average conditions. Drive dirt roads, live somewhere dry and dusty, or have had construction near your regular routes, and your filter can clog well before that. A clogged filter restricts the clean air the engine needs for a proper air-to-fuel ratio. The computer tries to compensate but can't overcome a physical blockage. The result is a richer mixture, wasted fuel, and lost power because the engine literally can't breathe. Pull it out and hold it up to the light. If you can't see light through it clearly, replace it. That's the whole test. The sixth thing is synthetic engine oil and using the correct viscosity your manual specifies. This is less about changing more often and more about what you actually put in. Conventional oil thins out as it gets hot and can leave deposits as it breaks down. Synthetic maintains its viscosity across a much wider temperature range, flows better at cold start, and resists breaking down under heat cycles. That matters most in the first seconds after startup, which is when the vast majority of engine wear happens because oil hasn't yet circulated fully. More consistent lubrication under those conditions means less internal friction, and less friction means the engine converts more fuel energy into motion rather than heat. The spec in your manual, whether that's 5W30 or 0W20, was engineered specifically for your engine's tolerances and oil pressure design. Don't go heavier thinking it's more protection. Thicker oil in an engine designed for thinner can actually starve critical parts. Use what the manual says, use a quality synthetic, and change the filter every single time. And the seventh thing, the one I said to stay for, is getting an OBD2 scanner and actually using it. Since 1996, every car and light truck sold in the US has had an OBD2 port, usually under the driver's side of the dashboard. The car's computer monitors dozens of sensors across the engine, transmission, and emissions systems continuously. When something reads outside its normal range long enough to flag a fault, it stores a diagnostic trouble code. But here's what most people don't know. It also stores pending codes before the check engine light even comes on, and it stores freeze-frame data, a snapshot of exactly what the engine was doing at the moment the fault triggered. Speed, temperature, fuel trims, load, all of it. That's the difference between chasing a problem blind and actually diagnosing it. Take the Lexus example. Codes P0171 and P0174 running lean on both banks. Both of them tripped at 63 miles per hour. Vacuum leaks affect the engine most at low speed. They make the air-to-fuel ratio go wrong when the engine is barely ticking over, not at highway speed. That freeze frame data points you away from a vacuum leak and toward the MAF sensor or the fuel system. Clean the MAF, road test it at 63, no codes come back. That's what freeze frame data does. Without it, you're guessing. With it, you're diagnosing. A basic reader costs $20. A scanner with live data costs a little more and lets you watch sensors in real time while the engine runs, which is how you catch a drifting oxygen sensor, a fuel trim compensating harder than it should, or an MAF reading that doesn't match what the engine is actually doing. One important thing, a code tells you which system flagged a fault, not necessarily which part failed. P0171 points toward the MAF, a vacuum leak, a weak fuel pump, dirty injectors, or a failing oxygen sensor. You still need to diagnose from there. But you're starting with real information instead of guessing, and you're catching the small, cheap problem before it fails hard and takes something else down with it. So, there they are. Clean the MAF sensor, clean the throttle body, replace the spark plugs on time, run top-tier fuel, change the air filter when it's actually dirty, use the correct synthetic oil, and get a scan tool and use it. Notice what's not on that list. No miracle in a bottle, no expensive modification, nothing that needs a lift. Just the engine getting the clean air, clean fuel, correct lubrication, and accurate data it was designed to run on. An engine that has all of that runs the way it left the factory. One that's been starved of any of it is slower, less efficient, and working harder than it needs to be every single day. If even one of these fixes something you've been ignoring, hit subscribe and drop a comment with what you found when you pulled those codes. Don't miss the next one either. We're going into how to actually read live data with a scan tool so you understand what your engine is telling you, not just copy down a code and hope someone at the parts store can figure it out. You'll want to see that before you touch anything else.